financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions. Welcome to another edition of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with my co-host Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times. Jonah, I want to open it up this episode by asking, have you ever had the pleasure of coming up with a nickname for an athlete? Because that's the way it used to be in journalism. That's where the famous nicknames come from, or at least a lot of them, like the Sultan of SWAT and the Yankee Clipper and the Manasseh Mauler and all these big nicknames. The Bickering Bills, even if you want to do a local one. I'm bringing this up because Josh Allen seems to have cemented Hold God as a thing for Matt Ariza after he officially makes the team as the Bills punter. And have you ever come up with a nickname before?
You know, maybe I have. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I'm not Chris Berman, so I'm not really in the nicknaming business. I do remember tweeting during the game on Sunday, Case Redeeming Keenum, which I thought was a little bit of a Chris Berman impression, trying to come up with something like that. But no, I can't think of any off the top of my head that I came up with myself. I can probably think of a few that you've come up with.
You may actually take credit for the Hold God.
Well,
which, unbeknownst to me, wait, let me take it back. Not unbeknownst to me. I think I've forgotten. I think I may have plagiarized you. And we may need to go back to the tape on this, but I may have plagiarized you by taking your comment and tweeting it out, much like John Fogerty when he did The Old Man Down the Road as a solo act and was sued by Creedence Clearwater Revival for plagiarizing Run Through the Jungle, and was found to have plagiarized his own. No, that's plagiarizing his own work. It was George Harrison who, My Sweet Lord, was found guilty of subliminally plagiarizing He's So Fine.
Well,
so if I plagiarized you, Jonah, it was subliminally, but that doesn't necessarily let me off the hook legally. You can sue me.
Well, no, I don't think it's plagiarism, but I would like my flowers, because I don't think it's the first or the only time that a thought or a comment that came out in this podcast or old radio show, or maybe even at the bar, has seeped its way into a 6,000 word piece on The Athletic that wins a Pulitzer and, you know, makes or breaks somebody's career.
Can you think of another? You gotta call me out on this shit when it happens, man.
I do think there are.
So I just lift from you. I just steal.
No. But I think that this podcast sometimes gets your.
It's an incubator.
Thinking. Yes. Sometimes there's conversations that come out of this podcast, and then, and you sit on them and let them incubate a little bit longer, and they turn into more fully fleshed out reporting. And
is there another example you can think of?
There was one not that long ago that came up, and then you wrote about it about a week or 10 days later, but I can't really think of which one that was. I think it was a Bills. No. It was the Sabres players from the 06 team that are all in the front offices. And this wasn't my idea, but it was something that came up on the podcast. And you wrote about it a week later, and you said, yeah, I didn't really think about that until we started talking about it on the podcast.
Well, I didn't steal that.
No. I'm not accusing you of stealing anything. Maybe a few.
Oh, I'm willing to. I can see how I have taken things without thinking about it, and I'm willing to apologize and fall on my sword. I'll fall on my saber.
Yeah, it's just I'm not a big scorekeeper on those type of things. I don't go around the internet searching for people that may have lifted a report or a tweet or something and demanding credit. I mean, I think you put things out into the universe and you hope that you get enough back, but I'm not always out there looking to see who gets the credit and who was the first to come up with some stupid nickname like Holder God. But I do think back to the original.
It's not stupid. Hey, if Josh Allen says it's good, like Turkey Burger Time or gunpowder and gasoline, if it takes off, it takes off. Hold God will be on t-shirts.
Yeah,
it will be sold. People will make money off of the phrase hold God.
Yeah, I don't know if I said it and put it out there as explicitly to where I could maybe claim copyright to this, but I do think conceptually I was ahead of the curve, that when we had Joe Buscaglia on before the draft, before it was known that the Bills might be taking a punter, and I think we kind of thought Araiza might be the first punter off the board, and maybe the Bills wouldn't get to him in the 6th round like they did. And I asked Joe, can he hold? Is he, does his godlike powers extend to holding as much as punting? And if I recall at the time, that was sort of a, well, we hadn't really thought about that yet, that we were just mesmerized by his punt god videos and hadn't really thought about whether he would be able to fit on the team. As I was asking because of the experience the Bills had with Corey Bojorquez, who was a big leg punter that they seemed to have, run out of patience for because of his struggles as a holder. And then as it turned, I do remember hearing and saying the phrase holder God in the Bills media room when they drafted Araiza. I don't know who was the first to say that or the first to tweet it. I think Matt Bove did point out yesterday that you were very early on the Twitter trend of tweeting out hold God. And I'll ask you, do you think when Josh Allen brought that up yesterday and said he saw it on Twitter, do you think he was talking about a tweet of yours and not giving you specific credit? Do we even think Josh Allen follows your Twitter?
No, he doesn't follow me on Twitter, but I think that he doesn't need to follow me or Joe Buscaglia or Jay Skursky or Mark Gaughan to have things retweeted by people who he does follow. So yeah, and I also wrote a story, which that was part of the headline, and I used that line within the story pretty prominently. But apparently I George Harrisoned you, and you are my version of My Sweet Lord.
I would like maybe
My Sweet Jonah
percentage of the royalties if it does come down to that.
If I make any money off of it, I will give you 60%. How's that?
Trademarked it as something for the show, a show product, a show slogan.
Right. Podcast, we should have a t-shirt arm of Tim Graham and Friends in which we just pump out t-shirts, which isn't that there was a local news outlet that was starting to get into that business or flirting with it a few years ago and never really followed through with it, which I thought was an eye roller. There was a local news outlet that was trademarking phrases.
It's like, a saturated market in Buffalo, West New York. I think.
It is, but it's got to be an easy way to make money, right?
Well, I would say it's a common way for podcasts to make money. Some of the podcasts I follow and listen to, because you're not always as fortunate as we are to have a wonderful sponsor like CTBK, that merchandise is another way for podcasts to monetize themselves, and any kind of catchphrase that can be branded on a coffee cup or a t-shirt or any other piece of paraphernalia could be sold as a branded piece of the podcast.
My boss at The Athletic, and also she was at the Buffalo News, Lisa Wilson, always urged me to make t-shirts that said "Believe at" or "Big If True," those types of things. She thought that.
Did you come up with those? I know you very much popularized.
Well, Big If True. No, Big If True was a Twitter thing. Believe at, I'm quite certain I came up with because it's a spelling thing. It was, and it was taken. That was taken. The other people have used that. But my spelling of that, and I think that's maybe you can find an earlier incarnation, but I know I did not take that from somewhere else.
The professional wrestler Roman Reigns has been using that as part of the Shield for a good long time, but maybe he took it from you. I think that it's fair to say that somebody in Roman Reigns' Twitter timeline probably retweeted you once or twice, and that's maybe where
Spells it the same way.
Well, there's really no spelling going on. It's
Yes, there is.
out loud.
There is one spelling.
Oh,
he says it.
Yes.
Well, no. Well, you say it. I mean, I took the spelling of it and turned it into a word. I made the word from believe that because it's how you say it. It's not just the two words believe that. In fact, it's said as one word with some of the letters missing. Believe it.
Well, you are the first and maybe the only person I've seen on Twitter using that usage and that spelling in that way. So maybe you should have come out with a coffee cup.
Well, I was thinking that I had stumbled across my second nickname that I've donned on someone that is stuck. Unwittingly, I came up with the third franchise for Joe Macy, which wasn't necessarily a compliment. I wrote a story for one of the national magazines, and they're all owned by the same company, which is why I have trouble remembering which one it was. I don't know if it was Ring Magazine or KO or Boxing 03 or whatever. They used to have a series that the title changed. And I mentioned that Joe Macy was being maneuvered almost like a business. Like a major league franchise. And so I called him Buffalo's third franchise. And the very next fight, I'm sitting there ringside and he climbs into the ring and it's got third franchise stitched on his trunks. And I got a chuckle out of that. But I guess that's what you do. You take what I don't know. We talked about it with Jack Macy on the previous podcast. They may have done that on purpose, just to say, we're going to take this and just to tweak Tim Graham. We're getting ready for this big fight, but we're going to send a message to the writer we don't like. So but I like that. I like third franchise. He's still known as that. I believe in his Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame bio, he's mentioned as the third franchise. And you have the hold guy.
You're bequeathing that to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go to court. I'm not going to defend myself like George Harrison did. I'm just going to go ahead and say, yep, you got me. The Shirelles or whoever it was that did He's So Fine. They get all the credit. They should anyway. I subliminally plagiarized. It should be pointed out, Jonah, you deserve, here's something that you did that you didn't get credit for and you should have, because you could have made money off of it, was that you were the person who tweeted out the picture of Rob Ryan and Rex Ryan on their bicycle built for two. And that has been used on t-shirts. I've seen that image turned into a cartoon form and all kinds of things. And you have it on your Twitter. But you tweeted that out. You were the originator of it.
I did tweet that out, but I didn't take the photo. It was a friend of mine had the photo, so it wasn't my photo. And when it came down to it, because there were news outlets trying to buy the photo, and I had to pass them along to the individual who did take the picture that didn't seem to want public credit. I think something to do with his job. He didn't want all of the public praise, but there were some news outlets that paid to use that photo. He made a bit of money off that. And all I got was, hundreds and thousands of Twitter mentions that day. And it stopped somewhat lately, but for years and years, I would log onto my Twitter in the morning and have, a few notifications, and they were somebody retweeting that photo or referencing that tweet. That really captured the zeitgeist of Bills fans in the Rex Ryan, Rob Ryan era for a moment in time in a way that I didn't think it would. I thought it would just be something that would make a few Bills reporters chuckle, because it is a humorous image. But yeah, that really took off. I thought that was going to be the breakout point of my career, and it really did absolutely nothing for me. But it probably did get me a few Twitter followers.
You could have made some money. Although then maybe you have, who was it,
Wegmans?
To
make the money off of.
Was it Wegmans or Top? It was a grocery store commercial.
I think it was an independent health ad, but it might have had something to do with Tops as well. And they were at Delaware Park filming different like healthy activities that Rex and Rob Ryan could participate in. And I remember seeing the commercial and not thinking that the photo of Rex and Rob on the bike was nearly as funny as, the angle and the way it was captured in the light of this picture. It just really was a extremely humorous image. And I think if Rex Ryan's ever put up on the Bills Wall of Fame, I think that's the image that we'll have to use if we put them up together as a package deal.
I haven't even mentioned, we're going to have Mark Schmidt, St. Bonaventure basketball coach, on in a little bit to talk about the American Cancer Society's Coaches versus Cancer 716 Golf Classic, which is Monday at Bartlett Country Club in Olean. The golf part of it is sold out, but you can still get involved with the auction and the dinner and sponsorships, whole sponsorships and that type of thing. They are going to honor former Niagara coach Joe Mahalik with the Jim Saddle and Inspiration Award. And the associate head coach at Michigan, Phil Martelli, is going to deliver the keynote address. You're going to have all the Big Four coaches there and the Western New York basketball community. And we're going to talk to Mark Schmidt about that. Good thing I wrote that Cody Ford story on Sunday and didn't hold on to it, huh?
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about that. With the reporting and the writing that you did and the thinking about Cody Ford and where his standing was on the Bills team, did you have any surprise that they turned around and traded him for a 5th-round pick 48 hours later?
No, I'm glad. That wasn't a story I was going to hold on to. That was just going to be my story for the day. So it wasn't as though I had to give it some thought. I guess not so. The only regret I have is that I didn't mention the possibility of a trade in the story. I just kind of wrote, will he make the team or won't he make the team? He's trending towards being an NFL player or a worthwhile player again. He's on the upswing. I just didn't mention the possibility of a trade, and I should have, because I talked to somebody before the game who specifically mentioned Wyatt Teller and that Cody Ford might just be a guy who needs a change of scenery. And of course, Wyatt Teller was traded away a few years ago for a late draft pick. So that's really my only regret. I just thought it was interesting that Cody Ford is a significant story as a 38th overall draft pick who's struggling to make the team, but he doesn't do interviews. So it's hard to really write a story about Cody Ford without talking to him. And with him standing there in the locker room by himself, I just walked up to him and said, "Hey man, you got 5 minutes?" And I realized that he didn't do interviews, but it wasn't until I was done speaking with him that Bill's PR had mentioned to me that he just hasn't done one in about a year. I think that it was like 11 months. And so I thought, geez, I went from just a story which is a very common story during the preseason or training camp, is the disappointing draft pick trying to make the team. Where's his head at? Where's the team? What's the team think of him? That type of thing, to a borderline exclusive. So if he was somebody who did interviews, maybe I would have held on to it for a different day, but I was like, shit, I guess here's a story people are going to want to, people haven't heard what this guy's had to say in so long. I need to share it. So and there he was, traded 2 days later. That happens sometimes. It happens the other way too in our business quite a bit. You have a story you work on and the guy gets dealt and you've wasted your time, or he gets cut or demoted or what, he gets hurt. You're writing a story about how somebody's is red hot or they're slumping. And then all of a sudden they have a season-ending knee injury and they go home to their family and they're not even around the locker room anymore.
How would you characterize Cody Ford's demeanor in that interview? Being somebody that doesn't do interviews, that he seemed put off by a reporter trying to talk to him after a game?
No, I didn't think that at all. I thought it was a very typical, what I would expect from a player who would rather be asked different questions but also was professional about it. I mean, he wasn't abrasive. The questions weren't easy because you're talking about negative things, but he was encouraged. He owned a lot of his lack of success. He was saying that he needed to have done more and hasn't done more, but he feels like he is now. He feels like his head's in the right place. So, yeah, I thought it was fairly typical. I thought that the best part of the interview was Deion Dawkins, who had praise for Deion Dawkins, but didn't sugarcoat the situation, or he had praise for Cody Ford, but didn't sugarcoat the situation that Cody Ford had put himself into, and gave some examples of that, that he was perhaps dismissive of Bobby Johnson's instruction and had tuned Bobby Johnson out. And it took Aaron Kromer coming in as the offensive line coach to not be better than Bobby Johnson, but just be a different voice, to where Cody Ford can say, now this is two people telling me the same exact thing. Maybe it's time for me to pay attention. But at least as far as the Bills were concerned, it was too late. And maybe this will be the Arizona Cardinals gain, like it was the Cleveland Browns gain that they ended up with Wyatt Teller in a renewed approach. Or I'm not saying Wyatt Teller was dismissive or whatever, right? The Bills just didn't believe Wyatt Teller was ready. Now, Wyatt Teller is considered a star in the NFL as an interior lineman. So maybe Cody Ford takes this with him to Arizona and plays well. And you may look back on it and say, man, the Bills got fleeced on that trade, but they gave him every opportunity. He was drafted to be a right tackle. He was being paid right tackle money, 38th overall right tackle money, and was struggling to find a foothold as a guard. And guards come a lot cheaper in the NFL in both draft capital and money when it comes to building your roster. It was time for Cody Ford to go.
I don't know if we'll ever look back and say that was a bad trade, or that they didn't get enough in the trade, because I think that's pretty much the going rate. That's probably a good return for somebody that might have been cut and you might have lost for nothing. But I do think if Cody Ford ends up playing well in Arizona, there'll be questions about why the Bills couldn't develop him and couldn't get
right. That's what I mean. Like for Wyatt Teller, you see a lot of criticism for Brandon Beane for not keeping Wyatt Teller, for not seeing what he could be. But at the time, nobody thought Wyatt Teller getting traded, big deal. I mean, he was a guy
because
he had zero track record. They got something for nothing at the time, is what it was believed. But yeah, you know how trades happen. If Cody Ford makes a couple Pro Bowls over the next 6-7 years, I mean, I'm not even going to say he does, but there is a chance you could look back on this trade and say, man, the Bill, or who's going to probably take the blame, be like, man, a good thing they got rid of that Bobby Johnson, which I think that's been a little overblown. I know that Aaron Kromer brings a lot to the table, but and this is something that Deion Dawkins stressed to me too, that Aaron Kromer is not better than Bobby Johnson. It's just different. And sometimes you need different. So that's an interesting part of this conversation too. I see a lot of the public like to take a look at a player and then determine who their position coach is and say, that's the reason. Position coaches, I don't want to say they're negligible, because that's a little too flippant. But position coaches are as good as the talent they're working with. They're not people who unlock, maybe they can unlock a little more out of you, but it's not as though, there are these position coaches out there who can just totally remake a guy or a unit. And yeah, you do have some legends out there, Dante Scarnecchia with the New England Patriots, O'Callahan Bill Callahan. I'm sorry. I'm doing Tommy Callahan. I've got Chris Farley on the brain. Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach who's been around the NFL a bunch. I mean, yeah, there are some guys with these sterling reputations, but I think by and large, you're going to get what you get out of the talent, unless you're an assistant coach who shows up to work drunk every day and blows off meetings, or you are in that rare 1% who just sees the game differently. Maybe you had a chance to be a head coach at some point and just didn't want to be, or a coordinator, and they've just wanted to do their own thing. Jim McNally, there's another offensive line coach who has that reputation. Just a guy, all he wanted to do was coach offensive linemen, never wanted to be a coordinator, never wanted to be a head coach, none of that. So yeah, you have some of that, but those guys are rare.
Do you think Brandon Beane or someone with the Bills sent your article over to the Cardinals to try to close that trade, like you might if you're playing in a fantasy league and trying to?
No, but I would not be surprised if somebody at the Cardinals did some research, and I'm talking about like a grunt, a coaching intern or a front office, assistant who maybe got hired out of a temp agency. I mean, I'm not talking about any kind of great football mind, may have done a little research and said, here's what Deion Dawkins unsolicited said about this guy. And I do know that, the Cardinals do have people in their PR staff who I've been familiar with for a few years and might say, yeah, he wouldn't have written this. This guy's not just going to write something because the team wants him to. So they might look at it and say, all right, here's some comments, or seeing Cody Ford's comments as a glimpse inside of his attitude. The guy doesn't do interviews. I mean, if they had read my story and Cody Ford is saying things like, man, fuck this place. I don't know if I want to play this game. I hate my coach, and I'm sick of this shit. Maybe that changes things, but I would guess that they probably did at some point at least come across that article before the trade was made.
Maybe they were just waiting for him to do an interview. They said, we got to hear this guy talk and hear what's on his mind. And he hasn't spoken in over a year.
I'm sorry. I missed the part of that.
Well, it was a joke, but I just thought maybe they were just waiting for him to do an interview.
Oh,
had to hear his own voice.
If this guy would please at least do one interview, we can get him out of here.
I think your story and the story behind the story illustrates the importance of the open locker room, the expectation that players are to talk in the locker room after games. And for people that don't know, I think a lot of people understand there hasn't been open locker room throughout these pandemic seasons, but there's also no open locker room in mini camps and training camp. And only when you're getting to these preseason games is that happening. It'll happen on Wednesdays during the season, but that hasn't started yet. And the opportunity to just walk up to a player and have a one-on-one conversation, especially with someone who's a little bit elusive and is never going to be brought to the podium, that's back in the mix, and journalistically, but I also think it's good for the fans and the league and the whole sports media complex to have those interactions back.
Well, and here's the thing. So let's say if over the last 2 years you wanted to interview Cody Ford, and I'm sure that there have been people who cover the team that have tried, but we didn't have locker room access. We're not allowed to just walk up to these guys and start talking to them because of the pandemic and the residual effects there. Cody Ford can much more easily tell an employee of the Bills, no, I don't want to do that. So, because there's an intermediary. But when the person walks up to you and is standing 3 feet away and says, hey, do you got 5 minutes? You don't want to be a jerk. That's human nature. And so he might not want to do the interview, but he also doesn't have anything against me personally. So he's probably, I mean, there's some guys who just say, get the fuck away from me. I mean, it happens. Or ignore you, pretend they're on their phone, turn their back to you, whatever. Drop their drawers and, and stand there, and make things uncomfortable. That happens. But I think 98 times out of 100, the person will say, sure. And maybe they won't answer your questions but they'll at least not say no. And, so I think that that's where it is important to be in the locker room and to be able to talk to guys and also you get to talk to different guys. And we've mentioned it a bunch of times on this podcast before, the situation that happened last season with Jerry Sullivan and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. I think a lot of that was born from those two guys being tired of being the two defensive players who had to come up there every week and answer the questions. And that's not the media's fault. We didn't say we have to talk to Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. That was the Bills saying, these are your guys you're going to get. And I think everybody kind of wore out each other. Like, you run out of things to ask. And so that was, in fact, one of the things that Poyer and Hyde were getting frustrated with, is that after losses, the questions were all the same. Well, because they are similar and we don't get to ask anybody else. They don't bring anybody else in here. So that's but if you're in the locker room, you can walk around to the different guys on the team and it spreads it out. It diffuses some of the burden of having to be the one to speak for to speak for negative or for lack of success. And it also it stops people from getting the credit they deserve too after a win. And I think that happens more often than not with the Bills because they're so good and they won way more than they lost, is that you lose the opportunity to shine a light on some of the people who are doing really well because you don't have that opportunity to talk to them.
And it allows for conversations and interactions where there are, and sometimes there are in these scrums, but there aren't half a dozen cameras and there aren't all the lights and 15 to 20 reporters all staring back. And I think that puts players in just a different mindset and a different mind frame that maybe they're being interrogated more than they're being asked to just share.
Or what the Bills will do, even with Josh Allen or a super duper star, is they'll bring in two people at a time. And so if you want to ask Josh Allen 5 or 6 straight questions, at some point he actually starts deferring to the other guy just to not be rude. I mean, there's a lot of human nature that goes into it where I would like to hear Josh Allen's response to this, but Josh says, all right, hey, Dawson, you want this one, or Devin? And so that's a different dynamic also. Used to be it was the quarterback and the quarterback all by himself. It was the coach. The coach is always McDermott is always by himself. But when you'd have people come up to the podium, it would be by themselves. And then through this, because for efficiency or speed, they do 2 at a time. And now you got 2 different lines of questioning going to 2 different players. It's harder to ask a follow-up. And it really does hinder the ability to gather what I think is the most potent or significant information, because it's just so scrambled.
And it becomes more of a performance of a post-game ritual of say, so are the TV interviews on the field, but this is what I want to say after a game. These are the lines that I want to get out there. Whereas I think in the locker room setting, it can be more of a real conversation and get more introspective.
Yeah, 2 people talking, just like, hey, man. And you're also able to be a little more disarming when you're in a news conference and you have other reporters there. You're mindful of their time, and I need to hurry up and ask my question as quickly as possible so that way other people can have the chance to ask their question. And I'm trying not to dominate this space, that type of thing. Whereas when it's just 2 people talking, I can better explain my question. You can speak in layman's terms. You can maybe even swear to get a point across, or to say, I don't know how that, not that that's necessarily the most professional thing, but there's a easiness. There's a more casual approach when it's just 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 people talking in a semicircle and the guard comes down, and it's more of a free exchange of information than the stunted question answer. And not only is it question answer, it's the questions coming from here and then from here and then from back there, and then this guy's asking a follow-up, and then it's just. But I mean, it's not a complaint, really. I mean, I wish it were better, but it's not pediatric cancer. Jonah, let's take a break here. And when we come back, we are going to have St. Bonaventure coach Mark Schmidt to talk about Monday's American Cancer Society Coaches for Cancer 716 Golf Classic that St. Bonaventure is hosting, and how you can get involved and why it's important. And I think we're probably going to have a nice discussion about transfer portals, conference consolidation, how all these things will affect schools like St. Bonaventure and the other Big Four basketball programs. Coming up next on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by our sponsor. CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach to accounting and rise to each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills. CTBK goes above and beyond by lending helping hands in the Buffalo and Niagara community through volunteer work and donations, and is partnered up with Victory Sports for 2020 and 2021 to keep kids in the community active. The professionals at CTBK are determined to help individuals and businesses succeed. Whether a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400, and see what CTBK's one-team approach can do for you. We're joined now on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK CPAs and Business Consultants, by St. Bonaventure University basketball coach Mark Schmidt. He is the honorary chairman of this year's American Cancer Society Coaches for Cancer 716 Golf Classic. That's going to take place Monday, August 29th at Bartlett Country Club in Olean. One of the all-time great causes that is both national in scope, but it comes down to the local level. So that way, local basketball fans and people who want to give to a great cause can get involved. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Big Four basketball and the general landscape of college hoops here with Mark Schmidt. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Mark, let's start with the Coaches for Cancer 716 Golf Classic, because it is right around the corner. People still do have a chance to help out if they can. It is sold out in terms of golfing, but so many other ways to get involved. I guess I'll just, pun intended, tee you up here and let you talk about this event. I know it's a source of pride for St. Bonaventure to be kind of a host in this regard. What are you looking forward to on Monday?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. It's a great cause, and as you guys know, I think every family or anybody that you know has been affected by it some way or in some way or some form. 15 years ago, Jim Sadlin, who was a former coach here at Bonaventure and who's the head of the Coaches versus Cancer, called me up and asked me if I would want to be involved in this great cause, and I did, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, and I knew cancer and all that stuff, but I didn't know how, the death rates and what people did to raise money, and now the increasing, people surviving it, for longer years and so forth, and so we've done this national thing. Like I said, I'm on the board now, and I've been involved 14 years, and we take this national thing. We go to a great golf course, and you bring 3 boosters along with you, and we raise a ton of money. But as you said, it's more from a local standpoint. I think the 716 area code in the Big Four, I've been trying to do this for a number of years, and it's always we've got it going a little bit, then it would fade. And we had a meeting here, I believe 3 years ago, and in Buffalo, and we wanted to try to get this thing going again because we thought it was such a great cause. And we did it up in Buffalo our first year, and it was okay. But we just thought that we could bring it to Bonaventure, to Bartlett, and Bonaventure draws, it's nothing against those other 3 schools, but in terms of interest, we just thought it would be great to bring it to Bartlett, and we did it last year, and it was a great event. It was sold out. We had great corporate sponsors, and we raised, I believe it was in the end like $44,000, and now we're trying to increase it. And as you know, it's the first year is really difficult, trying to tie up all the loose ends and so forth, and trying to learn how to run this thing. And and so this year is a little bit better. We have we have it sold out. We're just looking for more corporate sponsorships, whole sponsorships. We have dinner afterwards, and Phil Martelli is the keynote speaker, and we always honor somebody. And Joe Mahalik, who was the former coach at Niagara, and now is and then moved to Hofstra, and now, had a stroke, and we're honoring him. Try to bring in, the Niagara, Canisius and UB alums. We just don't want it to be a Bonaventure thing. And I think, like I said, it was good last year, and I think it's going to be better this year with Phil being the speaker, and honoring Joe Mahalik. So we have former coaches coming back, Larry Weesey, Jim Saddlin, Jim Barron are coming back. So it's a great thing, and we're looking forward to having a great day on next Monday.
Can we speak a little bit about Joe Mahalik? Of course, he's going to get the Inspiration Award. He's going to have bouquets thrown at his feet next Monday, and I'm sure he will pretend that he doesn't love every second of it, but we know that he will. Former Niagara coach, as you mentioned, had a great run at Hofstra too before his stroke. But who does not love Joe Mahalik? Everywhere he's been, I don't know that this man's ever made an enemy. I guess I'll ask you this, Mark. How difficult is it in your line of work to have a reputation like Joe's?
It's really difficult. Joe, I've known Joe when I was an assistant at Xavier, and he was an assistant at LaSalle. So I've known Joe for 25 years.
And that's not to say, Mark, I want to say that like all basketball coaches are jerks. They're not. But when you're in such a competitive line of work, and you're and also a lot of times whether it be with the media or anything like that, fans, I mean, the guy's been beloved wherever he's gone. It's almost like, it's gotta be very difficult to navigate that and to have, to be so well, universally liked.
I think it shows that you don't have to be a jerk to be successful. Joe's a great guy, does it the right way, was very successful, a great X&O guy, great in the community. I think it epitomizes what we all shoot to be as college coaches. You want to win, you want to be successful, but it's what you bring to the university, what you bring to the community, how you treat your players. And Joe has been, throughout his career, has been tremendous in those areas. And everybody gets caught up in, wins and losses. And those, as that's really, really important. We'd be fired if we didn't, win more than we lost. But it's more than that. Relationships with your players, how you conduct yourself on the sideline, all of those things. And Joe, as I said, is at the top of the list. He's done it so well. And it's a tragedy, what happened to him with the stroke. I know he's fighting, he's coming back, and he joined the staff at LaSalle this year. So we'll be competing again, like we did when he was at Niagara and in Hofstra. So, but it shows you can do it the right way. You can be a good guy and have a lot of success. You don't have to be, cutthroat, and you don't have to be cheating. You can do it the right way and have success. And Joe has shown that.
How do these Coaches versus Cancer events and initiatives foster that good feeling and camaraderie when you're competing against these coaches and these teams in the season and on the recruiting trail? But what's it like when you're able to come together for the same mission?
Yeah, it's like anything. It's like, a lot of people will like Phil Martelli is a great example. When I first got here, people hated him, at Bonaventure, because of his competitiveness and the success that he had against Bonaventure. I think he won almost every game. But when you see him outside of the sideline, we're all good guys. Well, we all want to win, but when it's all said and done, everybody has good feelings for each other for the most part. There's always, an example of that not happening. But having events like this, and you see really the true essence of coaches when they take their time out of their busy schedules to come to this. It's really, really important. But it just, you get out of that competitive environment, you have a fun day for a good cause, you have some beers and you relax and really, just be friends. And it's a really important cause, but it's also getting us out of that competitive environment and letting us understand each other as men.
You
Now,
mentioned having a couple of beers though, Mark. What happens when you do get to the 19th hole or you're at the dinner? I'm guessing there's at least a little competitiveness, right? You guys start comparing notes. Any friendly wagers may be placed. What happens
there's
with
there's
your?
competitiveness on the golf course now.
Yeah, that's true.
There's wagering going on, and it makes it fun. And then there's always, you always go back to a game that you won or lost or a call, and so you reminisce about that stuff. But in the end, when you drink a beers, it's about laughs and telling good stories about different things that happened, and that, maybe it wasn't a good thing that happened 5-10 years ago when you felt a referee made a bad call and you lost, but now you look back at it and you laugh about it, and those are the memories. And as I said, and I tell our team all the time, winning and losing is really important, but at the end of the day, you're not going to really remember a game or two. You're going to remember those memories that and those are the things that are lasting.
now, how competitive do you expect it to get out on the course? And you're going to have the home course advantage here.
Yeah, John, it's funny. It's I have a lot of friends here that belong to the country club, and some of these guys are stacking their foursomes, and they have really good golfers, and some people don't really care. But yeah, it'll be competitive. There will be some money exchanged on the golf course or exchanged on after the 18 holes, and some people owe some people some beer. But
all for charity. All for charity.
Right. And it's like I said, it's fun.
Gotta have caveat. You don't need to hear from Indianapolis on this.
It's all fun. We have a great time, and we're trying to raise in excess of $50,000 this year and try to make it better every season. And and I just we've done a great job here in with the community and how revved up they are about this event. There's a lot of golf events that go on, and sometimes it gets saturated. And Olean's not, it's not Beverly Hills. It's not like money's running rampant here, and people are still, throwing out, $500, $2,000 a foursome to come and to do that and show how important this is to the community, and even the corporate sponsorships, the volunteers that help. There's so many people that are involved in this, and I'm the honorary chairperson, but I really don't do much. It's the committee that we have, and all the corporate sponsorships and the volunteers. Without having those volunteers, we wouldn't be able to run this golf tournament and have it be as successful as it is.
What are your feelings? I guess I'll just leave it as a open-ended, broad question. You can take it any direction you want, Mark. Your thoughts on how your roster looks heading into this season after all the different things that happen in today's basketball world of getting guys, losing guys, this free agency. This is like when Reggie White had the interchangeable jerseys on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Was he going to go to the Browns? Was he going to go to the Packers? Well, this is, open season now, free agency. It's the salary cap era. Or I don't know what I'm trying
that's the concern. Is like, no salary.
You didn't get into coaching for this.
No,
you didn't want to be a GM.
Told me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or 30, whatever years ago, when I first got into the business, that you could be paying players legally, I'd be shaking my head and telling that you're a fool. The NIL, and I'm a firm believer that the players deserve to have something. They can't work in the summertime. It's a full-time job being a student and a basketball player, and the money that the NCAA is making, the coaches are making, the schools are making. So they deserve a little bit, but they don't deserve what's happening. You read some, people are getting paid $5, $8-9 million. The NIL was supposed to be, you use your name, image, and likeness to make money, sign autographs, sell your shirt, and that's all good stuff. And now it's dwarfed into, pay to play, and I don't blame the players. it's the system that needs to be corrected. And I'm not sure how it's going to be corrected. It's almost like the horse is out of the barn. But you can't, it's almost like it becomes, no loyalty. It's kids are able to transfer schools and just think, 10 years from now when they say, there's an alumni game, where are these kids what alumni game are they going to go to? They've been to 2 or 3 or 4 schools, so like I said, they deserve
you go to all of them, or you go to whichever one pays you the most.
Yeah. Whatever pays the transportation, I guess. But it's a shame what's happened. It needs to be fixed. I'm not sure how it's going to be fixed. In terms of our situation, we had 5 guys that could have come back. And we could have, had a chance to have another special year. One kid went, Jalen Attaway went professional, which we knew early on that was going to happen. But then the other 4 players, they were going to come back, and they weren't going to come back. They were going to come back, and then ultimately, they did what they thought was best for themselves, so we need to adjust. The playing field is a little bit different. The landscape has changed, and we got to adjust to it. And what we tried to do, Tim, was, we're not going to pay players to come here. Bonaventure doesn't have the budgets to do that. We have some, big boosters that really care about basketball. But we're going to try to recruit kids a little bit under the radar, kids that have had success at a lower level. Like we got the rookie of the year in the Patriot League, and the rookie of the year in the Northeast Conference, and Darryl Banks, who had a great, game and career and game against Kentucky, played at St. Peter's. Kids like that are looking to have a chip on their shoulder, that are looking to play at a higher level. And then if they have success, we're going to hopefully have some money that we can give them in the collective to show that we care, when they come next year and so-and-so is going to go, is looking to go to a school because of money, that we're going to have some money to be able to help them, and show our loyalty to them. But, I think we're going to have a young team, I'm not sure, inexperienced in terms of Atlantic 10, but we got some veteran players that have had success at a lower level. And we're going to coach them up, and we're going to see how good we're going to be. But it's a challenge. It's different. It's something I think all the coaches are trying to adjust to, because it's never happened before. But we're gonna go about it just like we've always done. Just try to get better every day, and and recruit kids that want to be here. Recruit kids that want to be want to be in the Atlantic 10. The kids that want to be pros. And at Bonaventure, it's they're not coming here for the social life. They're coming here to be pros, and that's what we sell. And we've had a lot of success in doing that, and we're going to continue to do it the way we think is best for our program and for our university.
Do you think the volume of transfers and roster turnover that we've seen, specifically in the last couple of years, is that the new normal? Is that going to continue that way, or do you see things settling down and kind of part and parcel with that, the point where, how does that change your recruiting of high school players and players coming in and thinking you're going to have them for 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change. I think I think the money's going to, I'm not sure if it's going to get larger, but it's going to probably stay around that, what the people are offering now. So yeah, it does change. The hard thing, I think, with this whole portal thing and with the NIL, I don't think you build programs anymore. I think you build a team for every year, which is difficult, and it's not fun. I think you ask any coach in the country about how do you become good and how do you sustain it. It's by bringing in kids that fit what you're trying to do. And when you have a veteran team with experience, especially the low majors and mid majors, even high majors, the more experience you have, the more success you're going to have, and that takes away you want to see kids develop as players, and you're not going to probably see that because you're going to get a lot of 1 and 2 year guys. But like I said, that's the part of the landscape is changing. You have to adjust to it. Recruiting is a little bit different in terms of, you don't know, like we have 12 kids on our team right now. And we always leave one scholarship open just in case something happens, at mid-year or whatever. But when you're recruiting kids, so we have one scholarship right now, but you know that you're going to have 2, 3, 4 scholarships come, March, April, May, because kids are going to put their name in the portal. So it's hard to really figure out what you need, because you don't know right now. You're not sure, who's going to be the guys that are going to play a lot, who are going to be guys that are going to be disappointed and want to leave, so it makes the recruiting that much more difficult. So we're, like I said, we're trying to adjust to it. The portal is going to be, like we got hurt with the portal in terms of high majors, coming in and getting our guys to transfer to that level. And we've gone into the low majors and gotten guys from those schools. So it's almost like every level is like AAA. It's like Division II guys are losing to low Division I, and low Division I are losing to mid Division I's. So it's really difficult. It's not fun, because for me personally, you like to build programs. You like to get to know kids, and you're not able to do that now because I think kids are going to be leaving, and with the portal not being able to sit out. I think it hurts. It hurts our programs, but it hurts the players too, in terms of not being able to, fight through adversity. And, the grass is not always greener on the other side. They make those decisions, because they're not playing or whatever. They're not looking at themselves and trying to figure out why they're not playing. It's always the coach's fault. And I think when they make that jump to the next school, the next program, the next coach does really the same thing that you're doing, and I tell people all the time, it's like, I want to win. I'm going to play the best guys. And if you're not playing, you're not one of the best guys right now. And you need to continue to work at it to become one of those best guys, and I think, with the portal and not being able to, and having not to sit out, I think it just makes it easier for those kids to jump ship.
You mentioned the portal there, Mark, and I'm asking this question out of genuine curiosity as someone who doesn't cover college basketball on a regular basis, but as somebody who's covered professional sports and free agency and the whole thing. So I'm trying to maybe put it into terms that I can understand. And I think there may be some people listening who would like a little insight on how this goes too. This does sound to me almost like fantasy sports when you're talking about a year-to-year basis, but from the real world, the real sports world, you used to only have to know the high school kids coming out and the JUCOs who are very close to their high school years. So their scouting reports kind of were similar. I mean, yeah, they could develop in their first couple of years at, so-and-so junior college or community college. But now it seems almost mandatory to be successful. You have to have scouting reports on pretty much the country. And it's reminiscent to me of, say, a football team, the Buffalo Bills, where they have their college scouts and their pro scouts, because we're going to need to go through free agency. We have to know who's up. We're going to have to know who's going to be graduating ahead of schedule. All these things that you need to know that even goes beyond how they play basketball. I guess how has your staff been able to, I guess, absorb these new avenues and adjust?
Well, the first thing is, like, they come into the morning, the first thing they do is look at the portal, and who's available, who's put their name in this morning, and I think, in terms of recruiting, it's the lifeblood of your program. And the assistant coaches, it's all about relationships, and they know a lot of people. And you stay involved. And when a kid comes, in the portal, for the most part, Tim, we know who that kid is because we've recruited him before. We've seen him at events. The crazy thing about the portal now, it's almost like recruiting on steroids. It's almost like you don't build relationships with these kids, because as soon as they put their name in the portal, it's almost like within a week, they're done. And some of them are putting their name in the portal. They know where they're going already. But other people that don't, like, you got to get involved ASAP, or you're not going to get involved. The kids are going to make that decision, so it's not like you're building like
you can't play hard to get in the portal. If you're a school, you can't play hard to get. You can't do the whole, like, well, maybe you want us more than we want you. It's a one-way street.
Yeah. In the past, it's like you recruit kids, you build relationships with these kids, you recruit them for a couple years, you get to know their families, and it's, to me, it was the right way to recruit. Now it's everything is so fast, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's more mistakes made. It's like you're not getting to know the kid as well as you need, or that kid's not getting to know you and your staff as well. And it's just, people are just jumping into things, and they're going. Everybody wants to play at the highest level, and as I tell, it's not where you play, it's what you do where you play. And if you want to go, and play in the NBA or play overseas, you don't have to go to the highest program. You got to go to a place where you're going to be successful. And you're not going to get drafted if you're at Duke and you're averaging 5 points and 3 rebounds and playing 10 minutes a game. And that's just the nature of it. You got to go to a place where you're going to have success. So it's really made the recruiting I don't know, you could say easier because it's quicker, but it's made it not as, in my opinion, not as much fun, because you really don't get to know the kid that you're recruiting. And you got to be careful about that too. That's the thing. You can't just jump in, because a kid puts his name in the portal. There's a number of reasons why a kid transfers. It's not always playing time. Maybe he's not a good teammate. Maybe there's so many different reasons why a kid will leave a school, and it's not always a positive one. So you really need to do as much homework as you can in such a short period of time.
When if you were able to talk to the players who are considering a transfer, and maybe you can use an example like Andrew Nicholson or Jalen Adams, players that stayed for 4 years and made it to the NBA, or you look at someone like Tim Wynn going to the Buffalo Hall of Fame and all the jerseys and the rafters, and what you gain from staying at one school for your full career. What kind of, do you think that message gets through to players? Can college age kids see the potential of staying where they are and having a full career, or has that changed too much?
No, there's always players out there that stay at a university for all the right reasons. The one of the biggest concerns that I have, Jonah, is graduation. It's like when these kids, as when you transfer, for the most part, you lose credits. And if you're allowed to play right away, then you can't make up those credits. And for the most part, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's going to hurt graduation rates. And one of the reasons why, the student athlete welfare and increasing the graduation rates for basketball players and football players was such a big thing. And I think now with the whole portal thing and kids going in, playing right away, not having to sit out a year, the academics are going to take a hit. And that's a shame, because as very few players go on to play in the NBA or go overseas. And if they do, the chances of them having a 10-year career is pretty slim. So your degree means something. And if you're going to have success, especially in today's world, you better have a degree, and that, to me, that's the shame. I think that's the thing that's fallen through the cracks. It's all, it's like this portal thing, and, who's having success, but it's all success in terms of basketball. It's not success, in terms of academics or what's going to happen afterwards. I'd love to have a study done to find out, all this portal, and it's not going to be done, for say, 5-10 years. What happened? Where did these kids go? How many kids graduated? How many kids went to high majors and had the success that they had at low majors, or mid majors? I'm a firm believer. You have success at a certain school because you're at the right school. You're having success at the right level because you're at the right level. Once you take that next step, it's a whole different ballgame. And some kids are successful, but there's a lot of kids that aren't. And the other thing too that's a big concern of mine is all this portal, all this transfer stuff. And some kids, it works out for them, but there's some kids, guys, that don't get scholarships. We had 2 kids that left 2 years ago that ended up having to pay for school because they didn't have any scholarships. No one offered them a scholarship because there's only so many scholarships, and now you're losing them to Division II players that are moving up. So what happens to those kids that aren't from a family that can afford to pay $50,000 a year to go to school? Now the kids give up a scholarship because they're getting bad advice from somebody that we'll find you a scholarship, and in the end they don't, and now they're out. So not only is it they lose credits and may not graduate, but now they're paying for school. And there's a lot of negativity around this that isn't getting the publicity that it needs.
The majority of transfers go down a level. As you mentioned, the publicity is really a lot about players that go up or move from a high major to a high major, but most go down.
For the most part, yes. But now with what's happening with the NIL, a lot of those kids that are low or mid majors, they're going higher because that's where the money is. It's like no kid is going down because there's more money, at Bonaventure than there is at some high major school. So I think, with the NIL, I think that's going to, produce more kids that are not going to be successful because they're chasing the money rather than chasing the chance to be successful. And like I said, some kids will be. I'd love to find, a stat, down the road of the guys that went high major that didn't have success, that chased the money. And it's hard, and it's hard, for some 19, 20, 21-year-old kid to turn down $200,000. It's like $200,000 is a lot of money. And probably when I was in college, if someone else offered me $200,000, I'd be running too. But in the end, when you look at the $200,000 and after taxes, it's like, all right, I got $200,000 after taxes. I got $30,000. And if I make the wrong decision, like I'm making a decision based on a 1-year thing, what about 5 or 10 years down the road? That $200,000, if you make the right decision, is pennies. But if you don't, then you're in trouble. So, that's the hard thing.
I remember thinking that my uncle, who was probably about 50 at the time, took a buyout from Ford and got, I don't know, $60,000 or something. And I thought to myself, man, what a brilliant decision. This guy just got free money.
Yeah.
And then he's on his 7th mortgage, on the same house, 20 years later.
Yeah.
But when I was 15 or 16, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
You're going to pay him not to work.
It's like, I think sometimes, decisions are being made short-sighted. It's like, hey, $200,000, but if they make the right decision, and they go to a place where they're going to have success, or stay at a place where they have success, that contract that they sign is going to make that $200,000 look like chump change. But like I said, for an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, for somebody to be throwing, hundreds of thousands of dollars at them, it's really hard to say no. And that's why I don't blame the players for doing that. I just blame the system for allowing this to get to this point.
The system, which is being driven a lot by college football with these major conferences, Mark, how do you see what's happening with these consolidations of major conferences impacting the Atlantic 10 and then to, trickle down effect a school like St. Bonaventure?
Yeah, I'm just afraid that it's going to be the have and have nots. And it's going to be, just like they did in football, whatever, Division I and 1AA, I just think that's a shame. I think the great thing about college basketball is that, on any given day, a low major, mid major can beat a high major. In the NCAA tournament, there's nothing like the NCAA tournament. I'm fearful that it's going to be taken away. Because there's a lot of mid majors and low majors that can't afford to be doing this, to have collectives and paying players. And, there's so many things that mid majors and low major programs need. You don't have the money. We got to be able to, travel and feed the guys and do all. It's like us, chartered flights are really, really important, and so are you going to take, a few less chartered flights so you can, have somebody give more money in the collective? It's just, I don't think for mid majors and low majors and some high majors, I don't think it's sustainable. The money that's being thrown out, because you need infrastructure. You need more buildings on campus. You need those minor sport, the Olympic sports. How are they going to survive? It's just, at smaller schools like ours, we only have so many alums that have the money to give. And if you go to those alums, the same alums over and over again, there's going to come a time when they say, hey, you got to go someplace else. And when you go someplace else, there's no other place to go. And now your program, isn't where it needs to be, so there's going to be a lot of adjustments, but I just think it's scary where it's going, and as I said earlier, the players, the student athletes, they deserve something. But when you don't have the NBA and the NFL, they have salary caps at least. Like, we don't have anything. It's just like, it's pay to play. It's like, these guys, hey, I'll give you $1 million, come. All right. They don't know if this, if he's a center, an All-American center sitting in front of him, hey man, I'm going because they just gave me $1 million. So there's going to be a lot of programs that can't afford that. And my fear is that, it's going to be split. There's going to be, two conferences, I think. And not in terms of, not two conferences, but two levels,
right.
The high majors and then everybody else.
How does that affect your viewpoint as a coach and on your coaching career? And, if it is the haves and the have-nots, does that change the motivation to maybe be coaching one of the haves at some point?
Something, I think if you're in the business of coaching, and that's the reason why you're in it, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. I think, everybody gets into coaching to have an impact on players' lives, to help student athletes be successful, not just on the court, but off the court, and then afterwards. So if there is the have and have nots, I still think there's going to be coaches out there that are motivated for the right reasons. They're not doing it for the money. They're not doing it for, the accolades of, winning games. And as we're all competitive. We all want to win. But I don't think, at least in my eyes, it's not going to change if things do change and there's two different levels, it's not going to change how I coach or how I am self-motivated and how I want to have an effect on our players' lives. It may, it may affect other people. I think the coaching world has changed a little bit. Like, when we first got in and when the old guys were in, they weren't in it to get rich. Back in the day, it's, like I got coached by Gary Williams and Dr. Tom Davis. Those guys weren't in it for the money. It's like at times back in the day, it's almost like a coach was like a gym teacher, and now it's different. The money is so big. So I think, some coaches are getting into the business, not for the right reasons. They're getting in because they see you can get rich. But that's not how you should be. And that's not how a number of coaches are. They're in it to help kids, to have an impact on a young man's life to make it better.
Yeah, you used to have to also coach something else, right? I'm the golf coach. I'm the JV baseball coach. And I'm not talking high school. I'm talking about at the college level.
Absolutely. That
teach three courses.
Some coaches that do that teach and so the business has changed. As you can, as you see with the NIL and the TV contracts. And could you ever imagine, 10, 20 years ago, USC and UCLA playing in the Big Ten? It's like that used to be the Rose Bowl, the Big Ten against the Pac-10, and now you got two teams, and it's going to probably be more teams that are playing, that have gone from the Pac-10 to the Big Ten, which is just, it's bizarre. But that's how much this has changed.
Well, let's also, I just want to change subjects real quick. I know we've had you here for a bit, Mark, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, when you talk about how things have changed, Do you find yourself speaking less about the New England Patriots these days than you did, say, I don't know, four years ago?
No, you gotta understand where you're from, and no matter if they're winning or losing, you gotta stick with them. And it was easier to be a Patriots fan, 4 years ago than it is now. But you gotta go with your home team. And what
do you think about these guys? That seems like a big mess.
It's I tell you what, the Bills are good, and they're going to be good for a long time because they, as you know, in the NFL, the quarterback is everything. But I'm a big Boston fan, and when I was a kid, the Red Sox were terrible, and you still stuck with them, and even through 1986 when the ball went through Buckner's legs. So that's how we're going to be with the Patriots, and you never know, Tim. You never know. Miracles do happen.
You've had it good for a while though with your teams, and I'm sure you've liked what you've seen out of the Yankees over the last few weeks at least. But it's been a rough few months for you.
Yeah, it is. It has. But Boston is still the city of champions. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
It's tough to argue. It's tough to argue. I get a kick out of it as somebody from Cleveland to watch. And I think we've talked about this a couple of times, to see the Bills fans over the years and their hatred for Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and all the ways that fans will mentally turn themselves into a pretzel to hate greatness. But I get it.
Absolutely.
It's I would never want him. I would never want Tom Brady on my team. Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, you wouldn't, just because you hate him.
Yes. Yes.
So you've had a nice run. Yeah,
I have a dog named Bella, and she's 5 years old now. But when I first got her, you walk her around. Oh, that's a nice dog. What is it? And what's her name? And I said, it's Bella. Oh, that's a beautiful name. I said, yeah, short for Belichick. And they said, screw her. So
is it really, or is that just a joke?
No, it's really. Her name's
That's
Bella.
real. Okay, that's
real. Belichick. Her name's Belichick.
I dig it.
It's probably not a good name, to have in Western New York. She may be shot one day, but
the greatest coach of all time in any sport, as far as I'm concerned.
He's the best. He's the best. What he's done with the New England Patriots in this era of free agency is just phenomenal.
I wouldn't count out the Patriots. I think they're still
absolutely not
very competitive team.
You got the best coach in the world.
People made the mistake of counting them out last year, and heading into the final week of the season, Bills fans were sweating it out.
Exactly, they were.
That was supposed to be the biggest given of the entire season.
The Bills embarrassed us in the playoffs, so we got a little bit of chip on our shoulder, I think.
I think they were a little upset by the no pass game in Orchard Park.
That was a good game. That was a good one.
That game was that was 60 minutes of insult.
Exactly.
Right there. The Bills had some demons to exercise in the playoffs, and they did. Let me just plug the golf event one more time. It's the American Cancer Society's Coaches versus Cancer 716 Golf Classic Monday. That's August 29th at Bartlett Country Club in Olean. The foursomes are all sold out, but there are so many other ways for you to contribute. You want to sponsor a hole, you want to go to the dinner, the auction, keynote speaker Phil Martelli and Joe Mahalik receiving the Jim Saddlein Inspiration Award. There's all kinds of ways to get involved and be there and to meet and to be a part of the Western New York basketball community and give to a great cause. Anything else you want to mention, Mark? That
no, I just just to thank the our committee and to thank our community for coming out to such a great event, and it just shows the type of community that we have, that to be able to get behind such a great event, and really looking forward to having a great day. Hopefully we have a lot of sunshine, and I know we'll have a really good time and raise a lot of money for a great cause.
Mark, good luck with it. Good luck with the season. And we'll be crossing paths soon. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Thank you.